I just ordered an AirTag to put into my
wallet.
I bought a new wallet that I can put an AirTag into.
Did you get one of you bought like an actual Apple AirTag?
Yeah.
Because they make now like some other company makes a wallet insert that is flat, looks like a credit card, and it works like an AirTag. And it works in Find My. This way you don't have that bulky coin thing.
Yeah, whatever.
Find My is great with AirTags, but like I put one on my dog and he ran away like a couple of weeks into moving here. And the problem is that he was running through people's backyards and he was too far from anyone's iPhones to ping. Like it was worthless. It didn't mean nothing.
I have that problem, but with my luggage.
I thought you were going to say something else. I have that problem, but with my wife.
No.
We have AirTags in the kids' backpacks also. Like that really, I never really needed to worry about that. But like, it really came in handy the other day because Roman didn't come home from school and I didn't know why. And he had to be somewhere. And like, I realized that he wasn't home and I pulled up Find My on my phone and saw that he was still at school. And I was like, crap. And then I ran out. It was raining and I ran out and I picked him up. And then I took him where he needed to be. Turns out he had like an after school program that no one told me. And so I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, my latest Find My drama is my daughter and I have been doing a version of 75 hard. We talked about this.
Right. 75. You're doing 75.
Not so hard.
Medium-ish.
Yeah, exactly. 75 hard with grace. And I finally have gotten a gym membership now. Ooh. And so, when it's convenient, we both go to the gym at the same time. And it's so Find My is telling me that I have a strange pair of AirPods following me around.
Because it's your daughter's AirPods.
They're hers.
Yeah.
And they're on my family account. I don't understand why that's strange.
I once in a while get an alert that there's an AirTag following me around and it's my own AirTag. Like it is weird. I will say it is not, it's not 100%, but what is?
Yeah. So, you tell us, what is your weirdest Apple AirTag?
No, we don't ask questions in the cold open. You have to wait for the actual episode. No, tell us. Whatever. We'll throw the book out today. Tell us what your strangest AirTag story is at facebook.com/group/all things MSP. Better near.
Operating an MSP sucks. Gozinta is here to make it suck less. With their consulting services, they are your trusted advisors through every step of your MSP's journey, from startup to exit. And their software is crafted with care to ensure that they're solving problems for you and not creating new headaches. Find out more at atmsp.link/Gozinta. That's atmsp.link/Gozinta. Customers don't want to have their support call answered by a bot. And if a real live human being answers the phone, they don't want to have to struggle to understand them. What your customers do want is a tech support specialist who speaks plainly, clearly, and has the skills and knowledge to help solve their issue. You want your customers to enjoy that kind of excellent experience. Give your customers what they want without blowing your budget by partnering with Helped. Helped's US-based experts answer 24/7 by 365, serving as your help desk. Check out atmsp.link/helped. That's atmsp.link/HELPT for more info.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the All Things MSP. I don't even know what we're going to talk about. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the All Things MSP Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Esgar, and with me is the human loofah, Mr. Eric Anthony.
Still making fun of the beard.
Still making fun of the beard.
Yeah, well, it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
I shaved. Michelle got mad at me. I brought it down. Michelle brought home these new drinks. They're called Celsius. Have you had this yet?
No, but I have heard of them.
So low in calorie, which is good. 75 hard. I'm trying to lose some weight also. Burns body fat, essential energy, accelerates metabolism. And I'm like, this sounds like a great drink. So I had one yesterday and it was very tasty. And then I had another one like after dinner, and Michelle was like, are you drinking my Celsius? And I was like, yeah. She's like, that's got caffeine in it, right? And I was like, no. She's like, you need to stop drinking that because it's 8:00 at night and you are not going to sleep. So I was up like more so than normal. I was a little more hyper than normal. And we're watching this new show, The Studio, on Apple TV, which is absolutely hilarious if you haven't seen it. And we stopped watching, and I rolled over. Like, as soon as I turned the TV off, boom, I'm out. And I'm like, what happened? And then I wake up at like, she always leaves me on the couch. She doesn't bother trying to wake me up. I woke up around 12:30, and I'm like, I go upstairs, and I was like, wow, that Celsius had a lot of caffeine in it because I just passed out for an hour and a half on the couch. But I'm going out tonight. Not that I want to, but I have to. So I'm going to try to get some caffeine in me.
Yeah. Well, it's 1:00. So the half-life of that caffeine should still be kicking in, for your extracurricular activities this evening.
We're going to a very famous Chinese restaurant in the city called Wo Hop. It's been around forever, and it's a guy's night. But one of the guys he's like a seal. He just throws words into the text train for like no reason. And I literally sent him a private message being like, stop. You're screaming into the void and no one wants to hear from you. And he's like the leader of the gang. So yeah, that's what's happening. All right, let's get into some, most people want to hear about MSP stuff. We know there's one person out there who loves when we don't, but we can get into something. You tell me what you want to talk about. It's been one of those days.
Yeah. So I did do a little prep and I emailed this to you probably about 20 minutes before we started the show. So I understand why you probably didn't see the email, especially since you were on a call.
Yeah.
But that customer experience is huge for me. And I think that it's a big differentiator for MSPs at this stage in the evolution of the MSP industry.
100%.
And I thought it would be interesting to talk about why that's important for client retention in the MSP world, especially right now.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that I agree with you in where we are as a field, as a technical field, as a whole. Yes, customer retention through setting expectations and providing good customer service. And I just read that hospitality book. I'm all in on this.
Yeah. And hospitality, that book, because we've talked about it in the past, has a lot of the key components in it for creating that experience that is going to help you retain clients. Now, I want to start off with, what is customer experience and what is the client journey? Because that's typically where people start with this, right? And I will say that there are really two components to the client journey. There are the actual stages of the journey, from anywhere from you're putting advertising out there to hopefully attract your ideal client, to the day that unfortunately they might churn and leave you. So it's all the stages from awareness to churn that you want to map. You can make it as simple or as complex as you want, right? If you want to make it simple, it's awareness, onboarding, the recurring cycle of them being a client, and then churn. Or you can put about 12 different stages in there. It doesn't matter, right? Make it as simple as complex as you think is necessary for your business. The second element is your personas, because there are different people at different stages of this who are involved with that stage. During the awareness or the sales cycle or the onboarding, you may be dealing with the owner the most of the client. As you're getting into the regular recurring cycle of them just being a normal client, it may be another contact, or it may be the end users. But it's important to know who the personas involved are at each stage, so you can address the specific experience of those people at each stage. Now, the other thing that I want to say about that is that it's not just the personas at the client. It is the personas in your business as well, and the personas of any vendors that might be involved in that stage as well. So those make up the general idea of creating a client journey. Basically, it's a pathway And then under each stage, you're going to have the different personas, and then you're going to address how each person or persona feels about that stage. And that gives you a starting place where you can start making improvements.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm just kidding. I'm big on the persona part because, not everybody absorbs information the same way. And therefore, when you're talking to your customers, like, you have some customers who are cool via email. You have some customers that it needs to be over the phone. There's some customers you even need to do just a Zoom call with. And there's some customers, like I have a client who, when they submitted a ticket and we would be like, okay, we need to remote in, when can we do that? That's how we asked. We basically asked everybody that question. Anyone who write in like, hey, we need to remote. When can we schedule a remote in? This particular client was like, don't ask me that question. If I'm sending you the ticket, I'm ready to go for it right now. And so we had to actually flag that user in our system as, don't ask that question. Just say, cool, I'm going to log in right now. Is that good? He'll write back, yes, just get it done. Because that's something that, like, it seems like a weird one-off, but I'm sure we have other users that probably need that as well. But like, it has now trained our team to meet that user where they want to be, and not have more back and forth that they don't want, not have a delay in things that they don't want, and allows us to provide a better level of service for that particular user, which, this is important. He happens to be the CEO at a client. So knowing that information and then passing that information off to the rest of your team is also like, that's like, there's like, it's like 1 and 1A, right? Like, know the information. 1A, does everyone else know that information, right? And getting that out to everybody is really important. And so I got to admit that everyone here who listens knows I use Halo as our PSA. Like, the CRM component of Halo is not really fully fleshed out in the way that we like. I think they're aware of this. And I don't think they listen, so it doesn't matter. And if you do, Tristan, hi, you owe me a t-shirt. So the like, I would love for, in the PSA, or when a ticket comes up and we have the sidebar with the user stuff, where we can keep notes in there that will update the main information about them. So this way, every time that particular person opens another ticket, it's all right there. I don't think it does it. I could be wrong. I don't think it does it. And that's where we have to build the culture in our team to, like, keep notes on people. And I've said this before, and I actually have had arguments about keeping data for data's sake, right? Like, how much information do you keep on a client, right? Do you keep their birthday, right? Well, that's personal identifiable information. You can technically go to CVS and ask for, all they need is your name and your birthday, right? Right. So, like, what are you going to do with it? Like, we like to send birthday cards to people. We really do. Like, we have someone who just, like, handwrites birthday cards, and we just send them out on people's birthdays. The problem is we don't know everybody's birthday, and therefore we feel bad that we're not doing it for some people. But, why are we keep, and there's an argument to be said for why you do keep, and there's an argument for why you shouldn't keep data about clients, and to provide that better level of customer experience, which retains customers.
Right. I think there's a couple of key points that you made there. And one is absolutely, and I don't want to turn this into a compliance podcast, but if you are going to hold some type of PII, you better have a reason for it. Now, I happen to think that sending out birthday cards is a great idea. It definitely is going to elevate the customer experience with that persona. And I think it's definitely a great thing to do. The other thing I want to make sure that is said is doing what you just described, and that is adjusting your communication to an individual person, an individual client, not even client, but person at a client. That is pretty expert level. So I will commend you, sir, for that. Yes. Because it is hard to do for all the reasons that you just described, right? There aren't systems that are tailor-made to make sure that you are providing that type of customized experience. However, if you can, like, you are going to retain people like crazy, because they will severely appreciate how much you pay attention to their wants and needs and are working the way they want to work.
I'm going to interrupt. This is exactly why I think everybody should read Unreasonable Hospitality. So there's a very famous story about 11 Madison Park that they redid in that TV show, The Bear, where in The Bear, the cousin was working at another restaurant. He was staging in another restaurant, and he overheard a table talk about how they had not had a Chicago-style pizza. In real life, at 11 Madison Park, this was a group of Europeans, which they had brought their luggage. They already knew they were going to the airport. The waiter, one of the staff people, had heard that they had this great food. They went on this food tour of New York City and they did all this stuff, but they didn't have what we affectionately call a dirty water dog. And so one of the staff members ran out back, ran to the corner, grabbed a hot dog and brought it back to this Michelin level star chef who took a single hot dog, divided it into 4 equal pieces, a swoosh of ketchup, a swoosh of mustard, a little bit of homemade relish, and said, listen, we know you guys have had a great time here. We know you've been enjoying all the food in New York City. We couldn't let you go home without a true New York staple, and handed them a free New York hot. They paid $4 and made this like gorgeous thing. And that really solidified them. Do you think that those people talked about anything else? No, they talked about their experience with that particular restaurant. And you can do the same in your MSP by like doing things like that. I stole this from Peter Shankman, and I'm sure I've talked about this on the I'm not allowed to call it, Michelle says I can't call it the pod, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm sure we've talked about it on the pod before, which is anytime we find out that a client happens to be pregnant or is expecting a baby, let me rephrase it that way. If the client is expecting a baby, as soon as we find out that baby is born, we will send them a onesie with our little Virtua baby logo on it. It says like, I don't cry when I spilled milk, I call Virtua Computers. And it's got like a bottle that's fell over a computer. Super cute. The amount of love that we get back and retention on a client on a $25 onesie is immeasurable.
Yeah. And that goes to the point that it's not about the money. Both stories you just told say it's not about the money.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend a lot of money to create a great experience, but it can mean huge amounts of dollars in the long run when it comes to the lifetime value of that customer.
And it's very easy. Keep in mind, though, like the stuff we're doing is like pretty innocuous. It's small. It's memorable. It's very easy to go too far. So rein that back, right? We're not sending flowers. We're not doing big gifts. Actually, I think we've sent flowers to a client twice. And it was only when we found out that like the owner of the company, an immediate family member passed away or something like that. Like, or, you send flowers when it's appropriate. But you could do the same stuff with your team, right? One of my team members just moved from one rental to another. And he was very worried about his living situation. He was talking to me about it. And he ended up getting a new rental and he moved in and things are great. So we sent him like an entire new set of pots and pans, right? Because everyone should have a new set of pots and pans when you move. And especially if you're younger, right? These happens to be a younger gentleman. He was blown away by the fact that like me as the owner and Lauren, our president, like gave 2 shits about him moving. Like, yeah, we could be on the receiving end of the phone call when he's complaining about, I don't know what's going to happen and I'm really nervous. And I'm always like, it's cool. You'll figure it out. If you need help, let me know. I'll gladly make some phone calls for you, whatever. That's farce talk. That's just, babble.
Yeah.
But once the thing gets locked in and you do something like that, you spend $150, $300, $200, $300 on a set of pots and pans, which I don't care if he cooks or not. It doesn't matter. That goes so much further and retains the employee as well. So it's so easy to do this, but it is very also, I think people tend to go well overboard without realizing it like way too quickly.
Well, and that goes to the whole theme of this, which is experience matters more than just about anything today, right?
Yeah.
Dollars are always going to be important, but when you're especially when we're in a North America market, right, where things are pretty good, and you're talking about working with small to medium-sized businesses, which typically, are not, completely strapped for cash, Some are, but most aren't. When you can create the right experience, most of the time the entrepreneurs who own those businesses are going to lean towards convenience, aka experience, rather than cheaper dollars. Now, we all know there's exceptions to this. There are whole industries that are exceptions to this. However, it doesn't take a lot to convert some of those to believers, like dentists. I'll just call out dentists, right?
You
They're
love those
probably
dentists. You love the dentists.
they're just historically
Yes.
they are notoriously one of the worst because of how cheap they are, and they're in a very for being in the medical field, they're in a pretty low, profit percentage, profit margin industry, right? And so I do feel for them a bit, but efficiency means everything to them. The faster they can move somebody in for a cleaning and out, the more money they're going to make.
Yeah.
And so if you can talk about that and you can talk about improving the experience of their end client, you're going to better be able to retain them, even in an industry where they tend to watch the dollars and cents a little more closely.
I think this also, like, I've been talking about gifts a lot, but I think if we don't talk about gifts for a second, think about how a new employee at one of your customers gets onboarded and what that experience is for them, right? So, like, the Apple experience is pretty good. A lot of times, Apple folk like to talk about zero touch. It's a zero touch onboarding, zero touch onboarding. And to be honest, I don't. It's not really zero. It's a light touch. It's not really zero. But Apple has really put out this thing where an office can buy a new computer and connect it to Wi-Fi, and it will immediately say, "Hey, this computer is owned by company name." And then once it connects to mobile device management, all of the stuff you need gets installed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Super easy. And then obviously you have to do this is where I say the touch is involved, sign them into things and get their account made or get, accept the EULA for them or whatever on Slack or whatever. And for the longest time, Adigy had not had this one thing that I had asked for. They just released it at the beginning of this calendar year, which is a screen that pops up to let the user know what's happening. Because in the past, apps used to just show up in the background as they were getting installed, but the user was able to log in and do stuff. And all of a sudden, they don't have Chrome, they don't have Firefox, they don't have Word. And then within 4 seconds of that person being onboarded that day, they're already calling help desk saying, I don't have my apps. Now we have this little screen that pops up and it says, please wait, apps are installing, percentages across all of the apps that are being installed. Then they're presented with a login. That holistic experience for the end user is far and away better because the user now knows exactly what's happening, isn't stressed that things aren't working because they can see them working. And whilst, yes, it might take an hour and a half to download the entire Microsoft package because, Microsoft, it's not them in this ambiguous void of when is my stuff going to be there. They have it right there. Visualization works so well for humans, right? Even something just as simple as having that graphic up there to make the onboarding experience better is a retention play, right? So again, we're not talking about gifts. We're talking about like a technology that needs to be implemented. How can you make that person's first day more seamless using technology? Because if you can onboard somebody at a customer fast and seamless, trust me, especially in a small business, the CEO notices. You're working with a 6-7 person company and they're bringing on somebody new, even if it's one new person every 6 months, that person's onboarding experience is going to be the telltale for how they're going to work with you and how they're going to work with the CEO.
So, and that brings up a great thing that I wanted to cover as we were talking about this. And one of the best things that you can do when you're onboarding a new client, of course, we're moving from user to client here, is to set expectations. And I think what you just talked about by putting that splash screen up and showing the progress and asking them to wait until they're all installed, that is a perfect example of setting expectations. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are two key pieces to the onboarding of the new client. Number one is going to be your MSA, because your MSA needs to set out all the expectations of this new relationship.
Yep.
And you need to take the time to actually go through it and translate that with whoever's signing that agreement. Now, that's step one. Step two is now you need to have an onboarding call with that entire organization. I realize how hard that might be, but at least the top 5, top 10 stakeholders, okay, of an organization, so that at least the managers understand how this relationship is supposed to work and how it works best. If you can set those expectations in the beginning during the onboarding, it gets you a lot of what I'll call experience capital, so that even though you are, onboarding is always going to be a little bit tough, because there are always going to be things that happen that you didn't expect, that they didn't expect, whatever it is. And it'll smooth out those bumps, I guess is what I'm going to say. And then it buys you a little bit of time, right? To make sure you smooth out that experience through the onboarding. But then you also have to come back and periodically revisit those expectations. And I think that's one of the key components of a QBR, or however often you are doing business reviews. Even if you're not calling them business reviews, you have to get out and talk to those clients on a at least minimum annual basis to reset expectations and hear back from them what their expectations of you are, because that alignment that you created in the beginning during onboarding may have drifted over that year. And it's very important that you come back into alignment on those expectations.
Yeah, because you don't want them to come back to you for the first time and be like, you suck, right? Like
Yeah.
you need that feedback. Like the feedback loop that we have to build is very important. And I'll be 100% honest, like our feedback loop isn't the greatest, right? Like at the end of a ticket, it sends a survey and the survey says, how'd you do? And like most of the time people are ignoring that. And once in a while we got a 5 or a 4 or whatever it is. I got one time somebody left me a 1 and I looked at it and it was just, at that point, the relationship had soured so badly anyway that like all feedback was going to be negative. And lo and behold, they're not a customer of ours anymore. And that's fine, right? Like that happens. You were talking about the MSA, which, I think we've talked this one all the way through, which is like, have Brad Gross write it, get it online, have it in all your quotes, because trust me, he knows what he's talking about. And then walk through it. The other thing you had said was the onboarding meeting with everybody. And I think this is so true, because I tell you that I don't do this, and it's bit me in the ass multiple times, which is we onboard a new customer and we tell the point of contact and the CEO or whoever we've been talking to, here's how you do things, like get to us. Here's how you communicate with us. Now, pre-COVID, this was easier because we would go into their office and see people and tell them what to do. And we printed a poster and we put it in their kitchen and says, like, if you need help, email. But now that everyone's working, hybrid or fully remote, we don't have that. So we go to the point of contact and we say, listen, get this information to your staff and say, here's how you email Virtua. Here's how you access the support portal. Here's how you do that. Here's how you do that. Inevitably, that point of contact doesn't do that. And then a month, 2 months, 3 months into this relationship, we're getting word from the CEO or whoever being like, why are we paying you? No one's getting support from you. And we go, we don't have any tickets from you. And they go, well, they're telling me. And they're like, okay, well, then we have a mismatch of expectations here because they're not telling us. And it turns out that information never got disseminated down to everyone. Right. And that right out the gate, if you're in 3 months in a relationship and the CEO is being like, listen, this isn't working, it's on you, right? It's on you as the MSP. So clearly you have to figure out a better way to like build those communication lines. And I've been trying to do that better myself when I bring on a new customer and show them that. Like we brought a new customer on the end of last year and we couldn't actually meet with them until February of this year. And in that 4-month gap, I only talked to 2 people out of a 17-person company because the other 15 of them didn't know who I was, didn't know who Virtua was, just got told Virtua is the new support team, and that was it. Like, we can't always trust the person at the company who we talk to be the communication liaison to everyone. Now, there are times where we have to fall back on that. So like a great example is today, there was a glitch with malware bytes and it made a pop-up on a bunch of people's computers. Cool. We're just going to send an email to everyone that we have as a point of contact and say, make sure your staff knows this. And our team already knows what to do in case we got a ticket. That's not, not that that's not important, but it was it was a small little thing and it's just an annoyance. It wasn't actually damaging or causing a problem to anyone's workflow. But in a bigger thing where like, they don't know who we are, like that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you touched on something that I think is important to bring up, and that is being proactive about things like that Malwarebytes message. Number one, it's important for them to know who you are before you send out a message like that. Right?
Yeah.
So they know it's from a legitimate source. But it's also important that you let them know about those things before they ask, because quite often it can reduce the amount of support tickets. It also lets them know from an experience standpoint that you are actively looking out for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a reactive business. We shouldn't be reactive anymore. We need to be as proactive as possible. Now, you can make the argument that this is reactive because you're reacting to the Malwarebytes message. That
we actually reacted. Well, we because a client emailed us at 7:30 in the morning with, what is this? And it took us a little while to figure it out. And then we finally heard from the vendor who was in between us and Malwarebytes, and then send out that message. By the time we got that message out, it was already almost 9:45, 10 o'clock, but no one had submitted a ticket yet. So we kind of got lucky, but yeah, like even being proactive to everyone else and being reactive off of one, I think is okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because you're never going to be perfect with that, right? There's always going to be that first incident that sparks you finding out about something. The
otherwise it'd be premonition, not proactive.
Right. And I don't think premonition, unless AI becomes...
this isn't Minority Report, man. I'm not...
Yeah. Anyway, I think that from a communications standpoint, that was handled correctly. It's the same thing with when we used to find out before clients would call in about their internet going down because we were constantly monitoring their internet connection.
I'm going to interrupt you. I have a huge thing about this, right?
Okay.
Because we're literally going through this internally and figuring out what we want to do, right? Okay. So we have Uptime Kuma. It runs on a box and we're monitoring a bunch of internet connections. The problem is that Uptime Kuma, when it alerts in our Slack chat, its alert isn't just like so-and-so down. It's like a 7-liner thing because that's just how Uptime Kuma does it. Right. And so it got so noisy because we're pinging every 5 seconds that like nobody's in my Uptime channel anymore. Like we had it all go to a channel called Uptime. Like no one's in it anymore because it was literally just vomiting up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, because we have 70 plus clients in there. And the second it doesn't ping for whatever reason. So we literally I'm not joking when I say this happened Wednesday. We're recording on Friday. This happened on Wednesday. My network engineer, myself, our director of technology, our Halo programmer, and our manager of operations were on a call and we're like, what are we going to do about this? Because we have to solve this problem because the clients are emailing us saying we're down. We should have known that already, right? So we quickly built out a process. You'll like this. We built out a full process. We're changing Uptime Kuma to ping tell us every minute or 3 minutes or something like that. And we're building a secret tab into Halo. So that way, when the ticket opens up, it connects to that domain. So we have it in their thing so they can see up downs. And we have a little tab. So this way, if it does go back online by the time someone sees the ticket, because there is a delay in ticket ingesting, we can act or not act based on that tab. So we actually had to build out this whole process because uptime is such a massive part of things. And clients don't want to be the ones to tell you that they're offline.
Right.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just this literally happened to us 2 days ago.
No. I mean, that's exactly the point. Now, I had the problem, of course, in the beginning where we were it would tell us about any time it was down. And if it's down for 30 seconds, nobody's going to notice. So I actually had to reconfigure, maybe write a script. I forget what I did to make sure that it wouldn't actually notify us until it had been down for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, something like that. Yeah. Something where it was going to be persistent. And I think I know what I did. I think I actually had it not create the ticket until it was down for like 2.5 minutes or something like that. And I don't even know why I came up with 2.5 minutes, what I felt like doing. Speaking of time though, we're getting close to that amount of time where you guys are probably going to stop listening to us ramble. So, wow, we should probably talk about some of these things that I had the rest of the list on a future show. So, sure. You know, if you want to hear us ramble more about customer experience, although it's not rambling, this is something that is critically important. If you want to scale your business, and the only way you can scale is by retaining customers, is to create an experience that is going to retain those customers. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say today. Justin, anything else from you?
I feel like this is really weird because normally it's the other way around, me ending the show and me asking you. I would love to hear what your experience playbooks look like, you know? So tell us all about what you're doing to give better customer experience at facebook.com/group/allthingsmsp. See all this stuff happening live time and me drinking my sparkling tropical vibe Celsius at youtube.com/@allthingsmsp. Follow us on all of your favorite podcasting tools. We're on LinkedIn for some reason. I'm going to talk to Eric about starting a TikTok account for us because I think we should start doing TikTok. I think that would be great. Look, my final word is this. There's a lot of MSPs out there and you can be just this much better than 99% of them by giving a better customer experience, and you'll win at the end of the day. And it's a sad fact that it is, but it is that way. You don't even have to try that hard. Just be a little bit better, 1%, and you'll win. That's it.
Yep. 1% better. And you go enjoy your Celsius. I think I'm going to go find a root beer liquid death and down that low calorie puppy.
Ooh, you should make a root beer float with that. All right, we'll talk about it on the All Things Liquid Death channel. That's Eric. I'm Justin. Bye.
Thank you for listening or watching the All Things MSP podcast. If you liked this episode, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, hit that like button, and consider subscribing to catch all our weekly episodes. And from your host extraordinaire, Justin Esgar, and myself, Eric Anthony, your humble producer and All Things MSP founder, thank you very much for spending your time with us. If you are not aware, All Things MSP started as a Facebook group and now supports over 6,000 members. We also have a LinkedIn page for those of you who don't do Facebook, and make sure to check out our YouTube channel for even more content. A special thank you to our elite sponsor, CoreView, helping you manage your Microsoft 365 tenants instead of them managing you. And a big thank you to our premier sponsors, EasyDmark, Helped, GoZinta, MoveBot, and Nodeware. And thank you to the rest of our sponsors. Without sponsors, we could not do what we do for the MSP community. Please consider checking them out. The All Things MSP podcast is a BizPow LLC production. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect the thoughts and opinions of any employer, vendor, sponsor, or random taxi driver in the Metro DC area. Be sure to join us next week for another exciting episode.